Let's talk LFOs. LFOs are a particular element that's used in creating sound and moving sound and manipulating sound. If we take a look at how what an LFO is first of all, so we can understand that, and then we'll look at how it's applied in music. So essentially, an oscillation is a movement. It's usually a regular movement over time. So, for example, if something moves back and forth, that could be an oscillation. Another way to describe an oscillation, or to show you what an oscillation is, if I use this tuning fork and I strike that tuning fork and bring it a bit closer to the mic. Okay, so you get a steady pitch, and if I move it back and forward, you're getting a kind of oscillation type of vibe from that pitch. It's kind of moving, it's fluctuating, and basically I'm using my hand as an LFO. So I'm kind of moving this back and forward, and it's creating different levels that you can hear in volume, and also slight pitch fluctuations as well. So you imagine having a synth with an Ableton, and essentially within that synth, what you can do is you can move certain things to create, like your volume going up and down, or your pitch moving slightly to get like a tremolo or vibrato effect, which is basically what I just showed you there now to some extent, if you're not sure of those terminologies. It just allows you to do so many things. It allows you to create movement in a million and one other ways as well. I use it for creating really weird and unusual rhythmical ideas that I wouldn't be able to come up with otherwise. Literally, LFOs are used in everything that I do. Every synth that I have here has at least 1, 2, 3 LFOs, and I use them constantly all the time to create movement within sound and rhythm and patterns and sequences. So they're vital to get some really interesting sounds within your work. Now, what I want to do is I want to hop over and show you this. This is learning synths from Ableton. So this is on the Ableton website, and I would really recommend doing this. It's it's a very, very good tool to use. So essentially what this is here, just going to try and get this around exactly where I want it. So this is essentially a playground carousel. I think I called them merry-go-rounds. And I couldn't go on them. I'm not very good with things that spin around, except LFOs and oscillators. That's fine. But things like this, can't go on them. So essentially what this is a merry-go-rounds which rotates and goes around in cycles. And there's a speaker here, and that speaker's blasting out sound. So when the speaker's facing you, you're going to hear it at a certain level. And then when that moves around, the speaker will not be facing you as much anymore, and then it'll get to the stage where it's completely not facing you, and then it'll come back around again, full cycle. So this is kind of what an LFO could do with your volume if you attach it to your volume. And this slider would be the rate of the cycle that this goes around. So this is your cycle rate of your LFO, for example. If it goes faster, very, very slow. So you get the idea. And that's essentially, one of the things that an LFO can actually do. There's loads of other things that it can do as well, but that's just to give you an idea. You can use it to change pitch. There's some information here as well on pitch and a few other bits and pieces. I'm not going to go through it here. I'm going to go through it in Ableton, but I'm just making you aware that it's here, and this is something good to check out as well. Okay, so let's move on to Ableton. And again, we're looking at the LFOs. Stands for low frequency oscillator, and again, an oscillation is something moving back and forward in a regular type of rhythm or pattern. So it's great for creating movement within your sound. It's good for changing parameters, opening and closing certain things within synths or samplers or drum machines, envelopes, things like that. You can attach it to a decay on a sampler or a synth, and you get some really nice sounds. For creating hi-hats using noise. It's great to add a bit of random noise or a bit of a random LFO to the decay of an envelope, and it's fantastic. We'll maybe do that in a wee second just to give you an idea. You can just use it to randomize certain parameters and get some really unusual rhythms and patterns, as I mentioned earlier on. It can also be used with live instruments, as in Ableton live instruments, unless you can bring an instrument into Ableton, then you can do it that way as well. So for example, if you want to bring a guitar in here and you want a delay, on your guitar sound coming into Ableton, well, those delay parameters, you could stick an LFO on there and essentially use the LFO to change the different types of delays or different settings that you have on your delay unit. So you can use it with plugins, so third-party pieces of software. You can use it on that. You can use it for Max for Live devices. Well, it is actually a Max for Live device itself. You can use it to control Arduinos, so an Arduino can be used to control anything. You could use an LFO to control the temperature of your garden, literally, if you use it with an Arduino. So there's so many things it can do, and like even in normal day life, if you think about it, an LFO again is a low frequency oscillator. So an oscillation is something moving back and forth on a regular rhythm. What about the hours in a day, the days in a week, the weeks in a month, the month of a year, seasons, sunrise, sunset, tides, a lot of influences in music, and a lot of technology has come from the natural environment around us. So when you're just kind of going through your day-to-day life, think about that. Think about the cycles of a wheel turning on a bus, shop opening, closing, things like that. These are all very, very similar, and you can see patterns like that in music. So let's, without me going into ones and too much detail of that, if I haven't already passed that threshold, let's have a look at some of the things that you can do if you chain a lot of these LFOs together to change different parameters. So essentially what I have here, first of all, is operator, and they're just literally two sine waves. And I'm set up in FM mode, so one oscillator is affecting the other, it's modulating the other, so it's coming in and out, and I'm using an LFO to do that. So we have operator with two LFOs and arpeggiator. I'm going to hold a note as well, just so when I press a note on the keyboard it stays, or it holds the note so it continues to play. So let's have a look at some of the randomization that I've done here. So you can see here the level of oscillator 2 is going up and down. Okay. There's a separate LFO here, literally increasing the frequency over a period of time. And we'll have a look at that in a wee second. That's going very, very quick. And then if we look at the transpose here, that's going up 4 octaves. Very quickly, and it's come back down to -12 as well. Okay, so if you can see here on the LFO, it says oscillator B level. So basically, if I click here a wee second, this saw up waveform is changing this level here over time, and it's doing it over 2 bars. So that's what this number relates to. Now I'm going to show you how to use all this in a wee second. And then we have this one here, and this is changing the gate of the arpeggiator over time as well. Okay, so that's going to trigger in. There's a few other bits and pieces as well. We've got a vocoder in here. We've got echo, as you can see. It's increasing the feedback over a period of time. And this is really nice here. So we have that set to, there's different ways that you can set the rate of your LFO. You can have it going in sync with your tempo, or, out of sync with your tempo, so it's running free. And this is running free at the minute, but it's still in sync with what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press one key on the MIDI keyboard here, right? So let's say C. Okay. And I'll actually just activate the right channel first. So, okay. That's one key. Just press C. Now, I've key mapped the on-off switch for each one of these LFOs, so I can press the number 1 on my keyboard and it'll knock all the LFOs off, so you can hear what it's like with LFOs and also without. I think that's really important as well. So let's knock the LFOs off. This is quite nice as well. It's that kind of rhythmical kind of pumping effect with the echo. But that's really all that's going on. There's no other movement. As soon as I press 1 again, everything's going to kick in. It'll take a wee bit of time to settle its head, or I can even stop it and start it again. So that's with one key. Okay, you can get lots of ideas and randomness from that. Okay, and I'll actually do one of these now. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new MIDI channel. And I'm going to go to instruments and pick anything at all. Operator's fine again, since we used that before. Okay, so I'm going to stick a ARP in here, just because I can hold it like so, and then get some nice patterns. And okay, so let's go now to plugins. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Max for live, and then in this instance, I'm going for max audio effects. Going right down to LFO. It's in alphabetical order. So here we are here, LFO. So now that it's basically in here, I haven't actually told it to move anything yet. So this is our cycles here. This is our waveform that we're looking at in this viewfinder here. So at the minute it's set to a sine wave, but there's actually 7 different waveforms that we can select. You have sine, up. Let's have a look at up. So this is like it's ramping up to its peak and then dropping straight down, ramping up, dropping straight down. So that's up. You then have down, and you have triangle, square, and random, and bin, which is binary noise. So that's just a noise waveform, essentially. And then you can change the rate, you'll kind of see it. Okay, so what I want to do is actually chain this to something so you can hear as well as see what's going on. So I'm just going to double click on all of these and put everything back to its default. So if I just hold down and maybe I'll just run a wee note here for this one. Just turn that off. Or okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab one of those notes. That note. Oh, yeah. So let's just delete all of these a wee second and just draw it in. I'm being silly here. Okay, so I'm going to just draw that in like so, and then just change the length of that to 1 bar. Crop. Okay. Just so we have something here, I'm going to just turn that down a wee bit level-wise. Okay, so say now we want to change something. Say I want that filter to open and close and to let in more and less of that sound. I can go to map and then map this waveform to this frequency. So you get that. Now by itself it's not that exciting. I can make it go faster or slower. Now, even with a wee bit of reverb on that, you get some interesting sounds. Take up the resonance a little. And then if I want to unmap it again, I can click this button to the right of the map, and that'll unmap it again. Okay, so I'm just going to stop this a wee second. So you get the idea. So this is your map button. So if I want to chain this waveform to something else, I press the map button. And that essentially it allows you to connect the LFO movement to another device's parameter or knob or fader, whatever it is, which will then move the same way. Okay, so say I wanted to basically ping that filter open. So we shouldn't hear. Let's see if I just take this down a wee second. Okay, so we shouldn't hear any sounds here now, but what I want to do is I want to ping that filter up. So I want to use down. So basically what will happen is it'll start off high and then go low. Okay, so if I take that right down, you'll see that a wee bit more. Okay, so high and then low. So that'll ping, it'll open the filter a little and then bring it down again. So I want to do that rhythmically along with my tempo of the track. Okay, so I'm going to move from Hertz mode to time division mode. So this is like 1 bar. So that's quarter notes. So if I map this now to the frequency, let's turn off the reverb. So now we're getting a nice rhythmical sound. Let's take another LFO. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into divisions as well. And I'm going to say half notes. And I'm going to map this. And I'm going to do the same downward setup here as well. Okay. I'm going to do this to the level of oscillator B. Just take the input down a bit. Move the rate again. Now I'm getting a completely different kind of syncopated rhythm. Now they're the same. And we can keep going with this. That's a different type of rhythm again now, isn't it? Okay, so you get the idea. So I'm going to just turn these off a wee second. Just so you can hear that, and just turn off the metronome as well. Okay. So if I just turn this off altogether, we can even go to like a weird kind of analog filter. And if I take up the resonance over 100, and if we play this, I just need to be careful with this actually because it could be very loud. Play this but turn off the oscillators. Now we're getting, yeah, now we're basically getting the filter to self oscillate because the resonance is peaking very, very high. And, you know, very interesting. And we can take the depth down to get a different type of sound. I'm just dying to hear a big kick coming in there. So you can see, you can just chuck one of these LFOs in and experiment with it and get so much from it. So I'm just going to unmap that again now, just so you can see some of the things that you can do. So again, these amounts up here, if I just map that again to the frequency cutoff and take the resonance up again. take the depth back. Well, basically what I can do is I can say here, I can start saying I only want this, you know, so say the depth is 100%, I only want that to be at 50%, so I can take that here. So it's nearly like capping this waveform, so we're only getting 50% of that now rather than 100% of it, or 9%. So you might just want a certain amount of movement coming through. So these values are very good for that. You can set a minimum amount and the maximum amount. I'm kind of swapping them the other way around, which is interesting as well. Very, very interesting. All this is operator with a self-oscillating filter and one LFO, and have a listen to that. Brilliant. Okay, so say if you wanted to, I'm just going to take what I want to do is take this one out for a wee second, so we're just left with this one LFO. So what you have here is an option to use not just one but multiple. There's 8 of these all together, so I can now map this to something else. So say I want to change the resonance, I'm going to just take it down a fair wee bit, and then maybe just take the, so this is minimum amount, maximum amount. So let's try and map that now to the resonance. And so say the minimum is, so you're getting a wee bit of fluctuation and variation there. Say we want to move something else as well, we can do that. You know, say we had something else in here, say we had some audio effects in here. Let's say an echo. So what I want now is I want the feedback to be mapped as well. But now it's going the wrong way. I have it cycling back always. So what I can do is take this down and then this up, and it should change the cycle. So now it's going the way I want it. Very interesting stuff. So this is very, if I just take that off, leave this. Now, there's still a million and one other things we can do as well. Just so you know, there's actually, let's just turn all of this off a wee second. There's actually loads of LFOs through Ableton already, and you've probably used some in one way, shape or form. For example, Autofilter has an LFO. If I just drag it in and show you, there it is there. There's your LFO, the rate of the LFO and the phase of the LFO. And we're going to look at these things now. Autopan is essentially 2 LFOs together. There you go. There's your LFO. There's loads. Chorus has a, well, it's more, there is LFOs in here, but they look slightly different. Corpus as well has an LFO section here. The Echo has an LFO section too, for modulation here. I've probably missed some as well, to be honest. A filter delay. This kind of has a roundabout way an LFO section. Frequency shifter has an LFO in there somewhere as well. Yeah, you get the idea. I'm not going to go through them all. There's absolutely loads. So you should be starting to understand how important the LFOs are, and you should also be thinking, this is amazing. If you haven't used these before, you should be thinking, I know what I'm going to be using for the next wee while. They're just fantastic. There's so much you can do with them. And the fact that the LFO is just a Max for Live device that's built in now to Ableton, you can just drag it and drop it anywhere. It's fantastic. You know, you look at all your synths, there's LFOs in those as well. All of your samplers within Ableton, they're there for a reason, because you can. It just allows you to do so many different things. So let's get back into this now again then, and look at what we had there. So let's just turn this on. Just take that level down a wee bit. So what else do we have? What have we not looked at? Let's look at, so if I press this section here, that opens and closes the LFO window to your multiple LFO mapping options. So you can just open and close that as and when you want to. So if we now look at jitter, what does jitter do? Basically jitter adds more randomness to this waveform. So if I add a wee bit of jitter, you can see it gets a little bit more wobbly, and that's going to have an impact on the sound, as you can hear. Okay, so if I double click it, that resets it. Let's move on to smooth. What does smooth do? Well, it kind of does the opposite of jitter. It smoothens out the waveform, as you can see here. So it's more sine wavy now, so it's kind of nearly like a way to kind of mix and change the shape of the waveform. And if you do that, you're changing the movement that's going on here with all of these parameters, if that makes sense. Okay, rate here, as I mentioned earlier on, this is the speed of the cycles of the LFO. So at the minute I have it set to beat division, so it's set to a quarter note at the minute. If I go to hertz, that's now in hertz mode, so it's cycles per second. That's what hertz is referring to, so how many cycles is there every second. So if I was to take that to 1, there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, like, you know, basically 1 cycle per second. That's what it's referring to. So that gives you an idea of the speed as well. And you can jump back and forward. You can actually get, like, I'm kind of sidestepping here a wee bit, but it does make sense to go through this. You can actually use an LFO to modulate an LFO if you want to. So for example, if I have that, and I have that set to change every bar. So if I map this now to this rate, so if I go change it to a square wave, something like that, and then I can now map this to this rate and change the depth to a maximum and minimum value if I want. So now we've one LFO modulating another. We can keep going, but I'm sure you're starting to get the idea now. Really interesting stuff. It's just amazing to explore sound this way. At least it's something that I really enjoy, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. So let's look. I'm going to just take this off because I might get a wee bit of confusion, so I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to take this back to where I had it. Okay, so let's now look at depth. So depth is like the lowest point here in this waveform to the highest. So it's how, you know, it's the depth of the waveform. So if I take the depth down, it means that the ranges that this is moving will reduce because the waveform is reducing. You can hear it as well. Yeah, that should make sense. Right, so bigger waveform, bigger movement. But it will depend on the settings that you have here as well, because that's just a way to constrain that even more. Okay, so just be aware of that, and try not to forget that, you know, that these figures will constrain what's going on here. So if you're moving this and you're not getting any changes and you're wondering why, it's probably some of the constraints that you have within these values, so you can move those as well if necessary. Let's look at offset. What does offset mean? Well, essentially it changes the starting point of the cycle of the waveform. So this is good for constraining values as well. So this is the filter frequency that this is moving, and say I wanted to get higher values, well, I can offset the waveform this way. So it's now, so the frequency is now moving higher up, or I can go the other way and it'll be lower. It's the polar opposite of what's happening here. And I think it's just because of the way I have it set up at the minute. yeah, because I've got these reversed. So it does get a wee bit confusing sometimes, but you know, if I had these the other way around, it wouldn't do that. Let's do it. Double click here, double click here. So now it's higher, now it's lower. So that makes more sense to visualize it, doesn't it? Okay, excellent. Let's move on now to phase. Essentially what phase does is it changes the starting point of each one of these cycles, each one of these oscillations. So if I move the phase, the starting point is slightly out of sync from where it was. We don't hear much of that, you know, the impact of that here, but that's essentially what it's doing, and it comes in handy. Say if you have a couple of these moving certain things and you want to just slightly put a couple of this sync to get this syncopated rhythm, you could use that. The only other things then that we need to look at, let's just take that down a wee bit. Okay, so the other one then is hold. Essentially what hold does is it just holds. If I press hold, it just holds whatever cycle that you're at that particular time. And then you also have retrigger. So this retriggers the phase of the LFO. So you can just retrigger that as well if you want. And that's pretty much everything regarding an LFO in this section. There's a few other things that I want to show you. So in more musical terms, this is complete and mad sound exploration, but it's brilliant. So if we move on now to tremolo and vibrato. So if you're into your kind of into making pop music or anything like that, this is something that you may come across. You'll definitely would have come across it if you're learning music theory or you know your music theory. So tremolo, let's have a listen to what it's doing. So basically I have this LFO connected to the volume of the output volume of this synth, and it's just taking the volume up and down. You can go slower or faster. Okay, so you're getting a kind of phasey tremolo type of vibe. If I add reverb to that. Oh, sorry. Well, this isn't reverb. This is my drone sound, but it's nice. Very, very nice. Okay, so that's tremolo, and all it's doing is just moving the volume up and down. But it you know, it kind of does hit home where you know, this does make a massive difference. So let's go vibrato next. So what it's doing is it's slightly detuning oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. So it's detuning it in sense. So if I turn it on, you can see now that the detuning of oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 is happening, and they're happening in unison, so they're happening exactly the same for each one. And I'm detuning in sense. So let's try and play something here. And let's take off the send for that one too. So now, if I take this off, it takes a wee bit of time. Oh, I'd need to go back in and rechange these manually because they're slightly out of sync from one another, but you get the idea. Okay. That's essentially what's going on there. So that's your kind of vibrato effect. Next up then, we have a unison type of sound. So basically what I've done is I've done the exact same that I've done for vibrato, only what I've done is I've reversed this. So I've went from oscillator 1 from 0% to 100 and then from 100 to 0. So they're kind of the polar opposite of each other, and it sounds like this. And then see if you just slightly take one down a little bit. kind of changes the phase a wee bit. So let's knock it off. Very nice. Add some of my drone maybe in there. Good fun, good honest fun. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that I want to go through, other than, you know, just to kind of demonstrate that this can be used in plugins as well. So if you want to take in, you know, a particular, I don't know, say you want some, this is a free VST that I just downloaded. So I've literally just downloaded it today. So say I want to change some of the parameters within that. Well, if I unfold the device parameter window, you've got one set up here already, but you can configure this and delete everything in here and add your own. But say that I want to change the feedback, so I can just click here, map, and then feedback. So now that's changing, and I can, you know, restrain that whatever way I want, and that's now on the effect as well. So you can hear the movement there. And yeah, so that is pretty much everything that I wanted to go through with an LFO. So again, just to recap, a low frequency oscillator is an element of a synth, or an element or a device that's used to create regular movements over time, and those movements can then be superimposed to another preset or another knob or function that you have within Ableton, and it allows you to create movement, rhythms, and everything in between. So definitely get the hang of it, because they're fascinating and they're really, really good and really interesting to use. And you know, these things are essentially all around us. So happy experimenting. I'll finish off with the old tuning fork. Enjoy, folks. See you soon.